Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the 10-Minute Product Podcast, where Jonas and I walk through all the scars that we had, walk through what methods work well once you've distilled everything that you've read in the books, and once you hit the road with all your theories about how am I going to make a product better. What we want to talk about this time is talking about something that some of you have experienced, some of you will experience. There's no chance that you go through your career without it. It is you join a wonky place. The product's wonky, the team's wonky, procedures are wonky, something is off. How do you go about landing in there? How do you go about finding out what is wonky, and how should you what big of a gap you have towards your goals, and then finally move towards making something better. So Jonas, you're dying to tell us examples, but I think let's start with some of the theory behind it as well.
Usually wonkiness centers around the 3 Ps. So it's people, it's product, or it's process. It might be all 3 at the same time.
The main thing is you quickly notice differences and gaps if you start to dig in quickly into everything possible. Processes, talk to people, match the goals with what's being done. Where are the KPIs? I'll give you an example. A company I worked with, for example, I remember perfectly looking at the KPIs, and I said, why don't these KPIs measure what you have as a goal in the company? And we said, no, but it's fine. They're sort of telling us that we're on track. And when you start digging into them, they actually didn't tell you anything, because they were sort of, business activity of users. And so if you look at business activity of users, if it's around banking, people have to do the banking. Does it mean they like the product? It doesn't matter. You have to go online, do the operations. And in fact, people hate the product or they love the product. If you don't actually have goals around that, then it's difficult. And if you look at neobanks, for example, the neobanks had the promise of being much more transparent, much faster, instant operations, instant transparent feedback, and full transparency on your phone. If they didn't deliver that, if the payment took 3 hours to go through, then, for example, your time to notification on your phone doesn't matter, because it took 3 hours to get the payment through. So then that I know it within 0.1 seconds doesn't matter, because it took 3 hours before that. Right?
Back to the 3 Ps as well, right? That across people, when you start noticing as you kind of onboard yourself and get more acquainted to the new organization that you joined, is that around people, if you feel like there's that the leaders that you interview and you start talking to are saying we constantly have to be involved. If we're not in the meeting, the wrong decisions are made. Okay, that's a symptom. When you are in team settings where you feel that there's no energy in the room, people are just either filling space or, in good English, passing empty boxes around. There's another symptom, right? Somewhere in between there is the issue. And it gives you a clue of where to go. And then around product, I think you had a good example around if you see a clear-cut vision, beautiful on slide, but you don't see it in the backlog of the teams as you join team meetings or agile ceremonies, and looking at the actual launch roadmap, what's coming there, and the feedback you get from customers. Again, somewhere in between there's a clue to look further to understand what's underneath then. And then around process, generally speaking, if you see a lot of meetings where the whole team is invited, or a whole peer set, like co-leaders, joins the same meeting but don't say anything, another symptom that roles and responsibilities might not be clearly cut, and only the kind of people who needs to be there in the meetings, and the rest kind of leans into a high trust culture that they don't have to be there. Another symptom. Around process as well, if you see teams constantly seeking permission or confirmation they're making the right decision, again, another red flag that's to be aware of. So trust you that you know what good looks like, right?
Yeah,
And the kind of the delta in between what you experience and what you want it to look like is that's giving you a good understanding what it takes. And I think just summarizing, right, is when you join a new organization, a new department, a new team, usually you join with a grace period, as in people think, around you, you should have some time to get on board, benefit from that, right? Our strong recommendation is to throw yourself into the detail with the 3 Ps under your arm. That's could be your way of conceptualizing your note taking along the way, the observations you do. Keep an open mind, but from early on, start synthesizing your observations into assumptions.
yes.
And then a strong recommendation to bring the relevant stakeholder group, usually your boss, certainly, but bring them along on your thought journey early on, because there's nothing worse than after a grace period, could be 1 month, 3 months,
Yeah,
you rock up and you announce the need for a revolution, and they're still mentally left from your day one, and
I
you need
will.
to bring
Yeah.
them along. How do you go about resolving the wonkiness? So we assume you're at a point now in your journey where you understand what's causing the wonkiness. And today we want to kind of give you some pointers around how you approach that in your leadership position.
The first thing to mention is that if you approach it constructively and you approach it in a collaborative environment, as a collaborative effort for people, it goes down much better, because a lot of people are afraid when you come in, because when you come in, it means there's already been either you're the new boss and people are a bit nervous, or you come in as an advisor and you're helping fix a company. People are nervous about their jobs and things changing. So basically, in general, it is a change for people. The attitude of collaboration is much better for everybody, for apart from mental health or whatever, but also for the lasting effect of the changes you're going to make, and for the depth of change. And so I think where to start, my first approach, first step is always categorize everything that you found. So you've been taking notes, you've been interviewing people, you've been looking at documentation, you've been trying the product, you've been talking to customers. Categorize things. Are they small things, such as, for example, oh, hey, something small but that is very powerful is every feature that you want to launch should have a success criteria. What does good look like for that if it goes live? If you don't have it, how do you know if it worked or not? That's easier to make the change with the teams. You'll have to spend some time with them to train them on how to calculate these things, but it's actually an easier change to sort of make happen. And then there's harder changes. If you look at the other extreme, to say, well, the 3 products that the company has are not adapted to the market anymore. Should you, maintain a product or kill it? Or should you merge 2 products? And those are big things, because it's strategic mergers of business lines, uh, technical mergers of different product platforms. It's a restructuring of the team behind it, because the squads will have to realign, the team will have to reorganize itself. So first step for me is, at least, is categorizing the change and what effects would the different fixes that you have in mind have on the organization. Basically, that's my first thing. And the second step is, how do you go about getting all those accepted and align the teams? Because if you want to change a product and change team structures, guess what? Not everybody's going to like it. So how do you go about it? So I think these are my first 2. What's your first step? How do you approach the beginning of the process?
First of all, I'm mindful that not to spark a revolution or announce a revolution,
Yeah.
and by doing so become like this revolutionary hero, let's call it, where everything kind of is tied to your person with your view of the world. And I think that highlights your point around being transparent, right?
Yes.
And so demystify the changes that needs to happen. So don't spark a revolution that paralyzes everyone, because what's expected of me in this new world. Start small, ideally with one team, or in an isolated portion of your team, and other teams if they have to be involved as part of an internal value chain. But do it kind of in a closed environment, where you do it in the way where you want the rest of the organization to do. And it also kind of checks the 3 Ps, that on the people side, you ensure that in that team or in team setup, that the right skills are there, the right leadership experience around product, obviously that they have a clear view around the outcome they are chasing, and thirdly that they have the right process and tools in place to kind of be successful in that regard, and then you use that as the kind of case team where you deliver something ideally to the customer. That kind of proves a point that either you shorten the time to market,
Yep.
you see feature fit from day one after a launch of a feature, and you see the people during the delivery of it all kind of thriving and working in a focused, high performing way.
And so I love that. So the example I gave earlier about, easier changes that are, for example, set KPIs for success criteria in certain features. Example I did with a company was to actually, they had nothing, right? No KPIs, no success metrics, no nothing. And they sort of said, well, we launched it because users wanted it. And so they weren't wrong. That was what was said in interviews. That was, but then I said, okay, but are people using it? If they say they want it, do they actually want it? Are they going to click on it? Is it going to be something they would pay extra for? How do you know the contribution of the value? And so we did with one team set KPIs. So we said, okay, here's the next feature. It launches in 3 weeks. So let's think right now, what would success look like? How does it translate? Yeah, we're going to make up numbers. But the fact that we thought about these numbers means that later, if we're double above these numbers, we thought we have underestimated the potential. If we're at half the numbers, we said, okay, there's something wrong, either with the business model or with the implementation, because it could be that I had once a sign up button that didn't actually let you go to the sign up. And so we thought, wow, it's such a bad feature. We have zero conversion, but actually the button just didn't work, right? So once we investigated, so
Then
we
yeah,
fixed
that's
it
good.
after the first 24 hours. We're like, oh wow, zero conversions. It's so bad. So basically, I did it with one squad, and so we did this. We created a dashboard. So the engineering team created a small, simple dashboard for that KPI ahead of time. So we saw our test team using it. We had individual conversions and click-throughs and all these things. And then we could, once it launched, we saw the curves go up, and we could do the math percentage of people who using it, of the people who logged in that day, how many, or people who went into the use case, how many finished with the thing we wanted. So it was super interesting for the team. But then we did the extra thing. We went the extra mile because we said after 2 or 3 weeks, we wrapped up a sort of analysis of the first 2 3 weeks, and we put it onto 3 slides and showed the whole company. We said, here's what we did ahead of time. Here's how we estimated the numbers, which are made up, but here's how we estimated them. Here's how we engineered the thing in, putting just that one KPI. And then here's how we started analyzing. When we saw the numbers, here are the actions we did out of this. And it gave such a vivid picture to everybody. And they said, this makes so much sense. And now you're in control of your launch, in control of the response, and in control of the reaction you have to the response, whether you investigate or put more marketing behind or etc., right? Or next feature.
And I love that. I love that example, Christian, because I think as well what you say there is an important point around being mindful that this needs to scale beyond the current squad doing it, right?
Yes.
So they need to write the playbook, or you need to stand outside the squad and write the playbook to make it scalable, right? And crystallize what is it they're doing differently, right? Exactly.
There's the other example I would say is things that you have to deal with ahead of time, which are harder. If you want to, for example, change two team structures, you need to run it through first a little bit quietly through leadership and say, here's what I propose. Here are the reasons why. Here are the things that the impact this will have. And here's how I propose over time to do the change. This is a bit more sensitive. You cannot just tell the whole team, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slap your two teams together. We're going to have only one tech lead and we'll make you play darts to see who it is. And so you can't do that, right? So you have to do a proper process in that case, get buy-in from the top, go one level down, get buy-in at that point, etc. So I think for me, these two examples are the two extremes, so to speak.
And as such also proves the point. I think what I would recommend as well is that as you at the point where you set up this kind of tests set up as your working prototype for the change you want to implement, you need also to consider what are the hard choices you need to make, right? Unfortunately, as well, part of this exercise, in my experience, also requires to either upgrade the leadership team, upgrading into to the skill level or the experience level that you require, which obviously as well could lead to some hard choices. The same on team level. So you need to be explicit around what the consequences of this could be to make sure you make those decisions and implement them in the right cadence. You don't want to spark a revolution. You don't want to upgrade both leadership teams, introduce a new process, make changes to the product, say at the same go. Again, it will lead to a chaotic environment. And not drive the results that you want to do. So you need to be very mindful around in which cadence, in which sequence are you doing the change, and how do you kind of keep that change, make sure that lands well before you move on to the next. So have a clear vision in mind where you're going, but do things gradually, depending on your context, of course. But
I would actually, that's a really nice way of putting it. I would synthesize this, summarize it a bit as product management is your trade, but when you go into new teams or when you go into new companies or you want to advise a company on how to improve or however, it becomes also a change management exercise. And so what's interesting at that point is that even though you're in product, you're actually in leadership, and you should go outside of the product world and figure out methods, read up on methods from change management, read up on methods of how to change processes, how to introduce new things, how to take away things from teams, and how can you manage through these changes without upsetting the organization so much that you get tissue rejection of what you're trying to do. Because then, not only did you not fix the problem, but you also left a mess because everybody's upset or angry or confused. And so you need to really go outside of the pure product production process, but into how can I get these changes done to improve what people are doing and to help them, but in a way that they accept it and that they can deal with it without you throwing everything out the window in one go and then having a path of destruction behind you, right?
Exactly. And I think in your role as well as product leader, you are exposed to headwinds, right? Any change in an organization across the 3Ps will make you stand in a position where you have headwinds along the way. But our strong recommendation is to stand strong, be mindful of changes. That if you learn along the way, you apply the changes.
Yeah.
But also trust yourself, because there will be moments where things don't go as expected, but you have to then kind of stick to your vision as well and keep repeating that.
And moments where everybody tries to tell you that you're wrong, and you find yourself thinking, "Is it me?"
And you might be wrong, but then from covered in previous episodes, right? When you make mistakes or make wrong decisions, you clearly learned that you were wrong. Then say it. And you maintain the trust in your role as leading this change, right? So
be transparent and I agree. Be transparent and ethical, and it'll work out for you, basically. Yeah. Hope this was useful for everybody, and learn through many, as we said the last time in the last episode, learn through many scars, and it sounds much better when we talk about it now than when we did it the first few times. So thank you for listening.
Exactly.
Don't hesitate to subscribe. Tell us what else you want to hear about, or if you want to hear more details, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And thanks for listening.